When I was around 9 or 10 years old, we were on a road trip up the East Coast, headed to Connecticut. We stopped at a rest stop, and my family members were grabbing snacks, and I decided to head to the bathroom. The rest stop was off of a highway. I do not remember at all what state, but somewhere in between PA and Connecticut. The rest stop was extremely big, but still normal. There were different places to get food, like Subway and etc., in the inside. I was trying to find the bathroom, and I found myself in a totally different section of the rest stop. Things started to look older and a little vacant. I was walking through doors, and then I went into this door in a weird empty room, and what I walked into was unexplainable. But here I go. I remember when I walked into the room, it looked like a disco show, sort of. All of the lights were going with rainbow colors. Waiters were walking around serving drinks, and there were a bunch of round tables with people playing bingo. The floors were like the old speckled bowling alley floors. It almost felt like I walked into a completely different time period. The weirder part is, the only people making any sort of movement were the waiters. Everyone sitting at these tables were in wheelchairs, like mechanical wheelchairs. Really old ones. The people in the wheelchairs were mannequins. Or at least they looked like mannequins. They looked like frozen rock-hard people, although they were very realistic looking. The image of these mannequins is ingrained in my head, and explaining it to people is so hard. It was almost like these waiters were playing with the mannequins like dolls, but it was the craziest setup. The mannequins had over-the-top makeup and wigs on. All of their arms were propped up on the round tables with bingo cards placed in some of their hands. I know what I saw. I know this happened. This was not a dream. As a kid, this scarred me for some reason, and I never stopped thinking about it. I walked out and went right to the car because my family had already gotten back in the car. I never said a word to my family about it at the time. This is still something I don't understand.
So this is a true story that happened. Just want to disclaim. And I had a series of events happen when I was around 11 or 12 years old. So just for a little backstory, I share a room with my older sister, and we had a different setup in the room with our furniture than now. If you can imagine, my door would be at a 90-degree angle most of the time. The reason for that was because my bed was the reason we couldn't open the door the whole way. My bed faced the door, and we also weren't allowed to shut the door. Anyway, my sister's bed was on the left of me. However, when I lied down on my bed, there was a dresser blocking our view from seeing each other. Yes, this is all relevant to my story. So one night, everything's normal, we go to sleep, and I wake up. I'm on my side and look to the window, half awake. It's morning, but something's weird, and I ignore the feeling and turn to lie on my back with my head leaning against my bed frame. I'm fully awake now, and I freeze as I look straight to the frame of the door. There is a woman with her head tilted to the side staring at me, smiling. I can describe this woman vividly to this day. And no, she was not anyone I had ever seen in my life. She was just smiling, and I couldn't see her body, just her head. She was straight up staring at me, and she didn't lose the eye contact. She had this pinkish red lipstick, dark wavy short hair, dark brown eyes, and looked to be between her late 20s or early 30s. I looked to my left with my eyes, not moving my head or body, to see if my sister was awake and seeing the same thing I was seeing, but I couldn't see her. I looked back. The lady was still staring at me. However, at the time, I wasn't scared. I was calm, which I questioned later. Because why the hell was I calm upon seeing a random lady in my room staring at me, smiling? After about what seemed like forever of unbroken eye contact, I just dozed off again. But the thing is, I'm still weirded out about this, and only realized until after. Her head was tilted to the side, but her hair was perfectly still, which I don't know how to explain, but it should have at least fallen in front of her face. But no, it just stayed there. And I didn't tell my mom until multiple other things happened to me.
These events took place in southeast London, back in the 1980s. A long time ago, when I was dating my ex-husband, he was living in a dingy basement flat that was so damp a previous tenant had actually nailed the wallpaper to the wall. I was okay going there for the first couple of weeks, until I needed to go to the loo one lovely, sunny afternoon. I duly trotted upstairs to a rather revolting bathroom shared by all the tenants. So far, so good. Coming back down, I saw a man in a World War II ARP warden's uniform, looking out of the window at the back of the first floor of the house. For those who don't know what the ARP was, it was a group of very brave men and women who patrolled the streets at night, when most of the air raids took place, as air raid precaution wardens. Part of their job was to tell people whose blackout blinds or curtains were not totally light-proof to cover their windows, like Hodges in Dad's Army, and also to sound warnings and generally try to protect people when an air raid took place by getting them down into the public bomb shelters or into their own bomb shelters. This was all after doing a full day's work as well. My ARP warden was standing and looking out of the window at two children and their parents. The father was wearing a Royal Navy uniform, playing with a ball in the back garden. He was totally focused on the little family, and then started shouting and banging on the window, trying to get the family to the safety of the Anderson shelter in the garden. This was an upside-down U-shape with a hole underneath it big enough to take the residents of the house, and was made from corrugated iron, supported by wooden supports, and covered over with earth, where families often grew vegetables. The warden turned around and went to the top of the stairs and promptly vanished, but I did hear footsteps running down the stairs very fast. When I looked out of the window to see if he'd made it to the back garden, the family had vanished, and all was quiet in the garden. I saw them quite often after this, and, of course, it piqued my interest about what had happened in the house. I went to the local library and into the local history department. There I found out that a bomb had landed on the house behind the house my ex was living in. The family had been killed by debris raining down on them and the subsequent fire. My ARP warden was also killed as he ran out of the house in an attempt to get the family into their air raid shelter. I found it very sad, especially as the family in the garden were really enjoying their time together, possibly whilst the father was home on leave. I saw this played out 3 times in all, and each time I felt tears welling up, knowing that all of them died even now. Remembering it after all this time, I still have tears in my eyes.